Hey, what's good? Hey, what's good? Hey, what's good? Hey, what's good? Yeah, so have you ever been driving down the street and you just sort of decided to stick your head out the window? You just decided to stick your head out the window at one moment in time, whether you're the passenger or the driver. Hopefully you're the passenger, but you stick your head out the window and you just absorb all the madness that comes into your face when you stick your face into the atmospheric place that entails getting smacked in the face by a bunch of wind all at once. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Because it feels good, because it feels real good to get smacked in the face by a bunch of wind. It's the sensation, it's the purpose, it's the intention of having the wind come real close and get all up in your nasal and your nostrils, so that it's in essence a super necessity, so that you get the wind all up in your grill. You get the wind all up in your grill, and it's super necessity to just feel something sometimes. It's not really about driving the car after all. Driving the car is just about getting to the destination. But realistically, driving within the car and getting the atmospheric pressure on your nose and your nasal from the atmosphere, from opening your face into the wind by just doing that and letting yourself go a little bit. It's really all about the experience from getting from point A to point B, and it really has nothing to do with the actual destination. It has nothing to do with even driving the car necessarily. It has to do with sticking your face out the side of the window and getting some of the exhilaration from the process of going from point A to point B, and letting the wind really just get up in your nostrils and circulate into your brain, and certain aspects of your dome that you didn't expect would even get there, because you didn't expect that part of your experience would lead you to get to that sort of a sensation. But you had to get that far, and you had to get that far down the road, and you had to get in the car, and you had to be on the way to the place to be able to then stick your face outside of the place, outside of the car space, outside of the window, into the outside space, to get that experience in that elevated mindset place, which is outside in an external mentality experience way, where you're going to get the wind all up inside of your ears and all up inside of your mindset and all up inside of your hair, so that it's a new way to declare yourself, to experience yourself in and outside of yourself in the air. Okay, and what do I even say that for? It's because there's so many correlations to that. What is the primary one? It's realistically about being into the game that has to do with playing things, and what you're going to get on the back end of playing is experience. You're going to get muscle memory, you're going to grow muscle, for example. And what does that have to do with games for change? What does that have to do with the games of business? What does that have to do with the business world? What does that have to do with making attempts in business? Basically, it has to do with making attempts, and at the same time making attempts and failing on purpose, but in this instance, I've talked about it in the past, that was actually kind of like the first podcast that had to do with this whole mindset methodology of doing things to lose, basically doing stuff to lose on a regular basis, because that's what happens with regular time, is you lose time by doing a lot of activities that are frivolous and such things. But this is an example of a podcast which has to do with something which is trying to grow brand awareness and brand energy, for example. So that's kind of like almost like the car, because almost like it's like there was no car before that necessarily. And so like if it's like an example that has to do with something similar to that example, then the step 2, the level 2, is like sticking your head out the window, where we're trying to take CPAs, which is little actions. We're trying to pay for little actions and trying to find low cost actions to be able to kickstart the engine, like I talked about last night, using money to kick money in of itself into little vehicles that it's parsed out into little energy parses and such things. And so that's what we're actually actively trying to do, is get energy balls and active energy balls to be able to kick itself in the self by making itself kick itself by monetary energy to kick itself. In other words, and by do that, be able to spend a little bit of money on costs per actions. That's what the game of business is all about. We're trying to make actions necessarily, so we're trying to take little actions and find little low-cost actions that can be taken on little clerk websites and things like that right about now. And that's sort of what we're testing out, to be able to try to get the little people that are also little. Well, they're actually people also, because it's actual people making actual actions, and we have to pay for those actions. But I meant the little dollars are as little people, because those little dollars are like little people, because there's little people energy inside of those dollars, because we've actually injected that energy inside of monetary energy. And that's the whole purpose of philanthropy energy being such a big deal within this realm and this world of Change4Games Studios, after all, per se, because when that is looked at in that similar fashion, and philanthropy energy is injected with human energy as well, just like monetary energy is injected with human energy in such a significant way. And that's the whole purpose of philanthropy energy, after all. That, when we come back to the car example, and we go to step 2 from step 1, step 1 was talking about the first episode of this podcast, when in essence, I talked about a lot of wasted time. If you go back to the episode, I guess I don't remember the date of it. It was something in like April or February or something in between, March maybe, where we talked about basically playing to lose. Go back to that episode. I think that's the title of it is Playing to Lose All Your Things. And the purpose of why I'm even talking about that now is because that was step 1, is just you're talking about time. You're talking about time, playing to lose time. You're just playing to lose time, but you're playing for something that's more than just, you're investing your time into something such as a podcast, which is what we're doing now, which is what that was the first episode to be able to spawn the podcast and make a vehicle so that we're this far down the line, and we're how many episodes. I don't know how many episodes we're at necessarily right now, but we've been doing a podcast a day ever since that initial foundational episode day, and we're talking about losing time on purpose, because just like if you go play a game of sports, that time is in essence essentially lost. It goes out the window and it's lost. So in this similar fashion, we're talking about losing again, but we're actually talking about losing money. It's talking about the game of losing money on purpose by having money to invest, and actually to invest it just like you invest quarters into an arcade game, and you know you're going to lose that money 100%, so therefore it's just like that. But this is what we're trying to do with actions. We're trying to pay for actions, and we expect to lose. We expect to lose it all. It's like a side hustle where you expect to lose it all the time. But if you can grow things by accident, by mistake, happy accident on purpose accidentness, then that's the thing that I guess we're talking about at the current time. Oh yeah, I lost my voice again a little bit. Oh yeah, whatever. Anyway, so with that in mind, when you're talking about playing like games like with quarters, like in arcades, for example, and this example is trying to transpose into the current mindset that we're talking about. First of all, the first thing I was talking about is driving down the road and then sticking your face out the window, because this podcast is actually like being in the car as an example to what we're talking about. And step 2 is actually starting to spend money on little actions and such things. And that's like step 2 is sticking your face out the window, because that's like this step 2. You're already in the car. We're already driving down the road. We're already spending time on this podcast. So now we're trying to step 2, which is spend money and add money to that podcast, which is like sticking our face out the window in essence. So at the same time, we don't mind losing time. We don't mind losing time on this podcast, I guess, because we're trying to make something productive out of it, or at least increase the chances that something can potentially come from it, because we're trying to make that chance to position ourselves to be able to try to make something come from it, because it can potentially come from it. So even though it's potentially wasted, and we're just driving the car down the road, the vehicle, and nobody even ever notices this podcast nonetheless, that we're still just doing something that can be noticed, at least in this realm, that is aligned with a brand purpose and a purpose of brand and self and such things like that. And step 2 now is actually spending money, which is monetary energy, because that's what this is all about, is cleansing monetary energy and trying to translate that into philanthropy energy, so eventually we can use that to be able to play the global giving games, which is powered by philanthropic energy. But now we're trying to cleanse monetary energy by making little purchases for little actions at a time. That's step 2. We're sticking our face out the window a little bit at a time, because that's step 2, because we're spending now a new type of energy, which is monetary energy, on little types of actions to be able to try to sell things and actually test out demand energy to see if we can get demand out into the marketplace, and then actually connect it with products and have it push the market, push the brand energy from the demand side back over to the supply side, and have little eggs be resting on the supply side. So every little demand ball, rubber ball, whatever you want to call it, little circle will be blasted out from the demand side, and it will be tossed over to the supply side, and then it will land like a little egg in the supply side and hopefully grow. It'll sit there and incubate and such things and hopefully grow, and hopefully our little process is able to do that. But we're trying to invest in costs per action. So we're actually taking little actions to get people, like to pay people on websites, small ones, to take these and test and experiment to see if we can get those actions to be able to amplify and turn into energy that is possible to be expanded and expanded upon, so that those can grow somehow from a surreptitious way of trying actions that we absolutely expect to go to 0, because this is a testing phase, and it's okay if it goes to 0 100 million times, I guess you could say, which is a joke, not that many times, but we really actually just kind of do want to waste money at this place and phase, and that's what's like sticking your face out the window, because it's not about actually getting to the destination of making a bunch of money and being like, hey, we were standing on a pile of money, but it's more about like sticking your face out the window to just get the experience of just trying to continuously let the air through the nose and the nostrils nostrils to be able to feel good while doing this process, and that's the whole purpose, is to feel good while doing this process, and while also investing the process of the time and the money and the energy all in the same direction, and at the same time compounding and compiling on each other to try to make a positive example of a personal brand attempting to be able to be built while journalism is happening around it, I suppose you could say, and using journalism to document and create, as opposed to creating this process of this sort of podcast to begin with, to be able to try to use it as a form of edutainment, which hopefully is valuable in some way or valid in some fashion or another, I suppose you could say. Anyways, but the purpose is, again, to be able to try to make these actions to be able to translate into money eventually, because it would be ideal to be able to invest those and then turn those actions into things that actually causes and create sales, but we're trying to test and use those actions to be able to test the marketplaces in different ways, and by just being able to test demand as in ways that are otherwise not able to be done, because otherwise it takes up too much time and energy at the same time, actually, because of the fact that doing it just by myself or just by the self is very taxing and very impossible. Well, not impossible, but very difficult, because of a team person, and that's what games are all about, and Games for Change are all about, and Change4Games is all about, because this game is changing, because that's a nature and necessity to spend money to get other people to participate and play sometimes, because that's how this world functions necessarily. So trying to get those cost per actions is hopefully checking two boxes at once, getting an action of someone who's a friend and a comrade to be able to participate in such things, that they're there's someone who's met after the fact of being able to try to take actions with them. You meet them through the internet for them to take action, so then therefore they're kind of doing it with someone, hopefully, and like they're kind of a friend, I guess, and you're paying them a little bit of dollars, or a little bit of scratch, a little bit of cheddar, a little bit of monetary energy is what I meant to say, scratching it off, scratching and parsing and trying to get energy to come through. And once the energy is coming through, that's like sticking your face out the window, getting that energy on your skin and feeling it, like, and not just keeping the windows closed, but actually feeling the atmosphere and the new change perspective, point of view, situation, type of vibes, type of environment, experience, feelings while driving a car down the street, because that's the purpose of driving it, is having a vehicle and trying to leverage the good times and the vibes, that changes and the motions and the emotions when you're in emotion by motion, and feeling that and such things by sticking your face out the window. And to add to that a little bit, one thing about taking time out of the process of just trying to get money all the time is the ability to give to the world and feel the world and connect with the world, the actual world that everybody lives in, which is difficult to actually do, because that's part of the whole purpose of talking about Change4Games all the time, and being something, making business again back into something that is about changing for games. It's about changing for games, because all adults have forgotten how to be kids in many ways, because they just think it's all about having kids in the older days, and that therefore makes them not be able to be kids anymore, because they have to be adults and parents, which is completely false, because they also have to sustain jobs, which is completely false in my opinion, because that's the whole nature of being a kid. And also being an adult, and also being a person, is having the ability to tap into that kidshipness, and then also being able to have more time by being able to do these kinds of experiments and such things, to be able to gain traction and gain energy in a personal brand sense, and in a business sense, and in a portfolio sense, and in an investing sense, to be able to do these type of experiments, like I'm talking about, playing to lose, wasting time, wasting money on little cost per actions. And I'm kind of kidding, because it's investing. It's actually investing, because I'm trying to invest this time, and I'm trying to invest these little cost per action, little monetary energy pieces that are being paid into trying to cause little actions, but are hopefully cheap enough to be able to make rapid actions. That's the whole purpose of playing to lose, is because you're playing for rapid actions. It's just like putting quarters in a video game at the arcade, where necessarily you expect to lose all of the monetary energy that you put into the video game in the past, in the arcade machines, to be able to give you the gratification of playing the game to begin with. But there's other games like that where you can actually win money, such as investing and such things, where you play it at the right time, you put the quarter in at the right time, and if you ride it up the hill, then you get it back, and then you get some back, which is unique, obviously, to any other video games. So that's the type of video games we're talking about playing, except we expect to lose, because just like as kids, when you played video games and arcade games, when you would put that quarter into the machine, you would expect to lose it, you would seek to lose it, you would know that you were losing it 100%, you were guaranteed to have a good time, because you just spent your quarter, and if you didn't spend all your quarters at the end of the night, you actually felt bad, because you didn't get all of your experiences out, and you didn't do your best to be able to facilitate and bust a move to just get out there and leave it all on the field and play the best video game session that you possibly could when you were a kid, necessarily. Or that was something that, I guess, I was used to saying. So with that in mind, let's leave it basically on a note talking about how networking
is something unique and interesting in terms of also talking about like kids and playing as kids and playing video games as kids and talking about playing arcade games as kids, as well as such things that there's an essence and an element that all people in the world are already connected. So in terms of networking, in terms of building a business based upon networking and actually trying to grow not just cost per actions, but cost per actions can happen in a bigger way, and deal making can happen in a bigger way that has a lot more significance and backsides and side effects and such things for deal making and momentum and monetary energy building and such things from deal projection and conceptualization and such things, and building momentum and building front end deal structure from just knowing that everybody in the world was a kid at one time or another, and that everybody is one. Everybody is part of the same energy in essence. But it's not just about that. It's like you have to think about when you're in the schoolyard and you're playing games as a school kid, there was almost a right, a privilege, a known ability and acknowledgement for everybody to be able to play with the yard games and tools that are on the yard, to be able to play with each other as kids and play games as kids at the lunchtime at the schools, for example, in the mainstream sense that the schoolyard games were available to everyone and they were made available to everyone, and if someone wasn't allowed to play, it was a right, basically, that everyone's allowed to play. And it's the same thing to have that mindset translate into the adult world in terms of networking, that you have almost like a right to be able to open a conversation with somebody in the world and chat with them and have a similar vibe in that type of conversation, like you want to play with them in a certain way, like you found a similar schoolyard game in the schoolyard of this world, which is all one giant schoolyard, that we want to translate into the adult world in this podcast for the conceptualization of the metaphor to be able to translate fluidly or hopefully effectively before the end of this little session, and then to be able to reflect upon the idea that all networking in the world, which can equal a lot more than small cost per action dollars to be able to cause small cost per action actions that we're talking about in terms of trying to start this little flywheel of energy, monetary energy and such things, because you can make a lot bigger deals by opening up networking conversations and networking based around that kid mentality of doing schoolyard games vibes and connecting with people in that similar way in the adult world by looking around the whole world on the internet, especially LinkedIn, to be able to find people with common interests, common grounds based on things that they're commenting on. Those are like schoolyard games that they're playing in a similar fashion. You want to try to vibe with them about similar things, to be able to pick up similar schoolyard toys and tools and such things, to be able to build sandbox things with them at the same time, because you just happen to coincide and get along in similar fashions, and you're having to need to try to recognize that in a similar way to the kid games and such in the adult world, so that we're able to all transpose together and flipify the business world and the adult world now, sooner than later, as soon as possible, to be able to flip it into kin energy again, as soon as possible, to be able to transpose that back into philanthropy energy, so that all businesses in the world are actually catering to philanthropy energy at the base of what the purpose is to begin with, so that the world becomes a better place and everybody's ultimately already playing business games, but we're all playing global philanthropic business giving games at the end of the day, so that everybody in every business, in every day, in every way, in every suit and tie, in every day is giving back to the world in a giving, global giving, philanthropic giving games, like the new sort of Olympics type of games, but they're business games that are being played in every business, across every person, across every energy, across the whole world, so that all that collective energy is worldwide and taps into every person's energy in the world to help better every single other person into the whole world. Hopefully, ideally, and yeah, totally. In other words, yeah, just like the collective energy of a schoolyard at lunchtime. All right, thanks again, Dinky Tehc, bye. Peace, bye.